I was like, are you putting something up, someone?
Welcome to our energy today. We're all over the place. It's a blast. I'm so glad you're here.
Stop yelling.
I am a ghost. Hanna is gorgeous. We're doing great.
Megan is still yelling.
I'm still yelling. Do you want me to turn my mic down? Because this is where I'm at right now.
Please do then.
You got it. How's that? Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, excellent. So, hi, welcome. We're not going to talk to each other because that's dangerous today. Not in this intro. We need to skip right to what we're actually talking about, which is I am discovering, and Hanna has been thinking about, navigating a schedule when you move from being a twosome to a threesome in terms of familyhood when you have a kid. It's a whole mood, and I've made a few changes in my life, and I'm trying to navigate like what that means, and it's also impacting my relationship with my spouse and like my relationship with my friends. And so yeah, just thought it would be an interesting thing to get into. Hopefully won't make me too emotional. I feel like I've cried in the last 3 episodes minimum, but that's fine. It's just my thing now.
I think we got it out before we started this.
Maybe. We'll see.
Fine.
Yeah, we did have a very long conversation before this.
We had a counseling session before this.
We did.
It was great.
Yeah. No counselor, but we managed. It was great.
Yeah. Also, that's what she said. It's the people who heard it appreciate that I said that just now. I had to get it out. You're welcome.
I know. I'm sorry
Moving
I just
on.
steamrolled right through that. I thought it, I said it, it happened, and then we moved on. And that is disappointing. So I'm glad you got that in there.
Thanks.
Stop it. Don't. Okay. What do you have to say to this topic? I'm gonna dial it back a little bit.
Okay.
Everything is fine. So yeah, tell me. You said that you had some thoughts to this when we brought it up originally. Tell me about your thoughts.
Yes. In the past few years, since I have been thinking more and more actively about becoming a parent at some point, often think in situations, I wonder how this is gonna be.
Yeah.
When I'm a parent, when I have someone else and not just myself to take care of. Mostly that happens when I do self-care. Like when I have days where I'm like, ugh, I do not want to get up. I'm just gonna spend the whole day in bed and watch Netflix or read or whatever. And then I think, yeah, that's not possible to that extent when there's a human being relying on you to keep them alive.
I mean, I guess, yeah.
And as always, this is spoken very generalized. Is that a word?
Yeah.
But here we are. Just take it with a grain of salt. And it came up again yesterday because the day before yesterday, I spent with my business partner and we did a lot of energy work together. We had 2 very intense sessions. And so naturally, after we were both just beat. The night after was also very intense for both of us because it kept like working in our system and we were integrating all the stuff that had come up. So the day after, we got up and we're like, oof, God, today is a self-care day and I need to recharge. Difference is she has 2 kids, 2 and 4, right. And I don't. So my self-care day, and I made a reel about this, which is kind of what sparked Megan and I's conversation about this, because she watched it and she had thoughts and feelings about it. I made a reel about like all these practices, like I did yoga and I laid on my acupuncture mat and I used essential oils and I took a walk and I read and I had tea and what else, like meditation and prayer and journaling and like all this gorgeous stuff, right? It turned out to be a beautiful video, and was very obvious in that video for people that don't even know me. She doesn't have children. And probably also she's self-employed because this is a weekday.
Yeah.
She can take this time for herself because she's her own boss. And for her, who was feeling the same way as I was and had the same needs, it looked like, okay, I have until 11 a.m. until I need to pick the kids back up. Of course, the day started with having to get the kids ready and get them to their childcare, and then have like, I don't know, 3-4 hours for herself. I was like, okay, so I can make the decision to leave everything as is. I'm painting a picture here. I don't know, but like leave the house, the mess that it is, and just take care of myself. And then I have to be okay in 3 hours because the kids are going to be back. And I'm going to need my energy for the 2 energy balls that I have that are going to want food and entertainment.
2 balls of energy rolling in my door.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And that's very different. And yeah, I just think about that a lot. So how's that going to look like when I have balls of energy that want food and entertainment and attention from me?
Yeah.
And should I keep going, or do you want to insert thoughts here?
Was that words? I don't know.
It was a German speaking English. Thoughts
got
here.
It. Oh, thoughts. Yes, very much. Yeah, absolutely. Everything you just said. And it really is the picture you painted of, am I going to leave everything as it is, or am I going to and just like do something to regain my energy right now, is so real. And then the thing still has to get done. Like whatever you left to make the decision to take care of yourself still has to get done.
Yeah.
And so either you or whoever is doing this thing with you, if you're lucky enough to have someone on your team, has to do it, or you have to do it. And it's never ending. And it's always never ending. And it was never ending before we had a kid. But there were more options. There were more opportunities to do the things.
Yeah.
And I'll say also there was less urgency in doing them.
Yeah.
Because we had more energetic room in our brains and bodies and lives. If there was some mess somewhere, it didn't have the same impact as it does now.
Yeah.
Our house is way less messy than it was before we had a baby. Partly because, like, mess can be dangerous for a toddler.
Yeah.
And partly because we don't have space in our brains to deal with processing that mess when we walk into a room.
Right.
So not only are there fewer opportunities to do it in, it's more urgent that those things get done. And that's also a version of self-care that also drains your energy. Like it's so much.
Yeah.
And it's
very
all
complex.
together. And it's a lot, and it's made a huge change in how I approach like planning for my week or scheduling my day or planning for my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is expected. You just don't know what that's going to feel like or look like. Like, you know, going into having a baby, if you've thought about it at all, that this is going to change my life in lots of different ways. One of them being it's going to take a lot of time. But you don't really know what the nitty-gritty of that is going to look like, what the day-to-day of that is going to be, and what the emotional impact is going to be.
Yeah.
And I'm realizing all kinds of things about the way that I coped with my relationship strategy, like the way that I set up my relationship strategies to balance my relationship with my husband, and the way that I set up my self-care time, and the way that just all of it has to be rebuilt.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the even like baseline assumptions have to be rethought and recreated and built from new, because
which also again takes energy.
It takes a lot of energy, and it takes communication, because now every decision I make impacts my spouse in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a hard thing to do for me.
Yeah.
See, here we are. Because I tend toward a little bit of codependency. And so one of my coping strategies for that codependency is to not think about the other person.
Mm-hmm.
To actively make the decision to take them out of my math while I'm making the decision, and then navigate with them how it will impact them later.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah, I loved it too. And it was great. And that doesn't work anymore.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. It's okay. I just need to come up with a new strategy for my brain. And probably deal a little more actively with how and why and in what situations that little beast raises its head. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's huge. And one of the huge things that we've done has been, and we're in this big old panini press, but has been to decide to spend more time at home. We have moved a lot over the years. I obviously have friends in far-flung places. And what that's meant in our life up to the past year and a half is that we've spent like 50 to 75% of our free days not in our house. Either traveling for a weekend to go visit friends, traveling for a weekend to go visit family, traveling for the day to go out to find some woods to hike in, going out, like just leaving our house and being somewhere else. And it's something that we really enjoy, and it's something that is somewhat required to maintain relationships from far away, or has been the way that we have chosen to maintain relationships from far away. And we re-entered that mode this summer a little bit, and just realized very quickly that is not going to be sustainable for us. Yeah. And that's going to mean asking people to come visit us, setting up our house in a way that makes it possible for people to come visit us. And just choosing to be at home more. And so we made the commitment that we were going to do one weekend away a month, because both of our parents live like far enough away that it's not convenient to drive and come back in one day. Especially with a toddler who doesn't like driving at certain hours and is okay with driving in certain other hours, and sometimes there's only a couple of those windows a day or just one. So anyway, and that's really hard. It's really, really hard.
Yeah.
And it just means we don't see people as often. But it's decisions like that, but on a daily basis, on a like moment to moment basis. Like my instincts are not reliable anymore. I guess not instincts. My go-to moves are not practically applicable anymore. And I know that this is a relatively universal experience when going from not having kids to having kids. But it also feels like this big, unique, amazing, terrifying thing.
Yeah.
When you're going through it.
Absolutely. When something from the theory that you knew turns into actually
the experience you're having.
Yeah. So this is what they meant.
Yeah. So that's what's going on right now. It's exhausting. And some of it is happening. Some of it is working. A huge part of that obviously is learning to navigate something new with my partner and to interact and plan in a way we haven't before. Neither of us plan very well. Just as a baseline. I think for lots of reasons. And so we haven't practiced planning. And so we're getting a little crash course in scheduling and coordination and planning and thinking ahead and not being quite so spontaneous and last minute as we have tended to be in the past.
Can I throw in a side note? This is another human design side note. I don't know Hunter's type, but your type, you're not supposed to plan.
Well, I guess too bad, so sad.
I know that that's not helpful right now.
Yeah.
But I hope that on some level it's reassuring that you were doing it right.
Well, that's good.
You're not supposed to plan.
Maybe I'll get back to that someday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm phrasing that wrong. It's not that you're not supposed to plan. It's that your energy works best. You're thriving when you follow your gut in the moment and allow yourself to reassess and allow yourself to, so I decided I was going to do this, and now I'm in the motion of doing it and realizing I actually don't want to do that, and then allowing yourself to not do it and correct course. That's how the archetype of your energy works.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, that tracks.
Yeah.
And also it's a really inconvenient
I know.
character trait right at the moment.
I think you're doing great. I don't know if that's helpful, but from what I'm seeing, I think you're doing great.
Thanks, buddy. I'm doing okay. It's just hard. It's hard work.
Yeah.
It's so funny because the actual work of like taking care of this human that you have to keep alive, as you said. There's learning to do, and there's adjustment to do, and there's like an interpersonal energy that takes. But that's the easy part of all of this. Like keeping him alive and interacting with him and being with him is the easy part of all of this. Again, I also feel like that's relatively universal.
Mm-hmm.
Pause. I plugged in my computer, but
Not the other end?
right. Well, my 1-year-old likes to flip the switch on the surge protector.
Oh, yeah, that's fun.
Because it turns a light on and off. So
yeah.
I didn't actually plug it in. Yeah, the recreating life strategies from the ground up is what's taking the work, and finding caregivers and creating relationships of trust and collaboration around taking care of the human child, also takes a lot of work. And it's all interrelated, but that's the big neon sign in my life right now, is figuring out the balance of maintaining a relationship with my spouse, creating new relationship strategies with my spouse, maintaining a relationship with my friends, and creating new friendship strategies with my friends. And then figuring out how and to what extent and in what form I take care of myself, and how that impacts all of the other things. And how I guess it's all related, but yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's also exciting too, though, because it's some of the, like, being home more often. That's excellent. Being home is excellent.
Yeah.
And because I felt before the pressure to maintain relationships in the way that I was, it did lead to some like really exhausting months and really exhausting weeks, and because it felt like I had all of this open time. It felt like I could and I should, and therefore I did use that time for someone else or for something, like a measurable, use it for a measurable. And being in this full-on time makes you recognize the measurability of things that didn't seem measurable before. And that was not a clear sentence, so I hope you know what I meant.
Kind of.
I guess I'll try to explain it again. Sorry, that sounded really annoyed. I'm not annoyed by that.
You can leave it.
Well, it's... yeah. The impact that restorative time has on your life. And I used to be able to get restorative time without thinking too hard about it.
Mm.
And so when I would end up in these overwhelming situations or overwhelming months or times when I overscheduled myself, I'd be like, oh, I just got to back off that for a while. And then I'd back off for a while, and then I'd do it again, then I'd back off for a while. And there was a kind of balance to that where I would be restored and then be overextended and then restore myself again. You know, like there was a kind of balance to that. But there are less weekends where I can just lay on the couch for 2 days and restore myself. You know, like that is not an option right now. And I don't
I like
it being
how
an option.
I like how you said there's less of that when the reality is there's none.
I mean, yeah, less being none.
That was cute.
I mean, I could manufacture one of those weekends. I could send Hunter and the baby somewhere else for the weekend. But then Hunter needs a restorative weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was mentioning earlier, where every decision that I make has an impact on him.
Mm-hmm. And you can even schedule for someone else outside of the two of you, but then that takes energy to plan.
It takes energy and it takes money and it takes the time to find that person and to familiarize them with our kid and to put together a schedule or notes for them. You know, like like you said, it takes a lot of energy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just a whole different landscape of life. And I'm really looking hard at that because it's been such a weird, abnormal, like his first year of life was totally out of the ordinary for us. And so nothing felt like it should be different because everything was different.
Oh, wow. That was a sentence. Yeah.
So being now more accustomed to the difference that's still a part of our lives, and then also moving away from like complete and total isolation and quarantine and like what feels like more normal life. Like I'm going into an office, Hunter is going into work. There it feels more regular, like it did before. It feels more like it did before.
Yeah, and more what you were expecting. Never mind. Ignore me.
Yeah, I have no idea what I was expecting.
Okay.
I can't remember that far back.
Right.
Dunno. But it does feel more like life did before with this obvious huge change.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm noticing what needs to change from my former go-to moves, as I called them. Now, because life is feeling familiar again.
Yeah. And whenever I think about that, because I do a lot, that's what we introed the episode with. I ask myself, well, can I do anything now to prepare myself to come up with strategies that are gonna become handy later? And this is something that Megan and I were talking about before we officially started this episode. We said the more I have noticed, the more time I've had with myself and the more time I have practiced these self-care things, the more I try out different things and use them in different situations, the like the better I get at them, the more effective they become, the more different strategies I learn that work for myself and learn which work for myself in which situations. And with all of that, the faster they work and the less I need of them and the faster I get my energy back. And something I just thought about while we were talking is that that's one of the many upsides for me of having kids later. Because, and we talked about this in one of the episodes towards the end of the last season, that of course I have those moments when I think, oh my God, I'm like getting so old, and I'm using air quotes here, and like now should be the time, and and are we losing time, and should we do it now, and blah blah blah. And I get frustrated, and then there's a lot of these moments where I can see the huge benefits to having more. I was about to call it preparation time, but I don't like that.
Time before,
yeah. With myself and also with my spouse.
Yeah.
And we talk a lot about that too, that's also helpful to talk about a lot of stuff with your spouse before and like play out theoretical scenarios. And this also shows up in my self-care, that I notice that I used to actually need a whole day of all of these things to recharge myself. And am now noticing, like within the last year, that like I've done a big leap within the last 1-2 years of getting to know myself better. And with that, I get faster at the recharging. I get better in that. And that is one thing that I think and I hope is going to be very useful for being a parent. Because like Megan said, there's going to be, let's use the word less, time to do that. So I'm glad I have all this practice and like a bigger toolbox to pull from. So I'm good with 10 minutes and don't need 12 hours.
Yeah. I'm so
here's to hoping
for you for that. Yeah. Here's to hoping. And
it might turn out completely differently, which is what I say every episode when I talk about expectations. But here we are.
I think you're pretty, from what I know of you and from my experience, I think that's probably a realistic expectation. I think there's going to be
that makes me
obviously
feel good.
ups
Thanks.
and downs in that.
Yeah.
And times when that's lived out to 100% and times when it isn't. But there's also not no time. And the great thing about having a partner and having a support system, and you even live close to your family, which is great, is that there are opportunities to say, I need a whole day.
Yeah.
And
even that part, sorry.
No, please.
Even that part, we're actively setting up. My mom lives in the same house. It's 2 different stories, 2 different apartments, but it's the same house. And having kids was part of that decision. We talked about that actively, of setting it up that way. She is steering her career in a direction where she can take more time off. I know, it makes me want to cry. She had where she had more flexibility in her schedule. Just 2 weeks ago, she came home and announced happily, I can do home office now 2 days a week, and said that in the context of like, I can
ready
take
to
your
go.
Yeah. So yeah, sorry, continue.
No, that's really, really excellent. And that was part of our decision to move across the state, which we did a couple years ago, because we had started talking about having kids, and the idea of having a kid when we lived 2 hours away from my parents and 4 hours away from his parents, 5 hours away from one of his parents and 4 hours from the other,
Oof.
just seemed undoable.
Yeah.
Because of exactly that. Like, having that support is so integral to maintaining the balance.
Yeah.
Of all of the things that you're already balancing plus one huge new one.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's quite the experience. It's quite an experience. It's very destabilizing, but it's also really interesting and really, like, I'm channeling Hanna here. It makes me very excited that I'm having this negative experience. Yeah, it's really opening up a lot of new things to look at. Which Hanna loves. No, I really like it too. It's just yeah. It's quite an experience.
Word.
Any ideas you've got, let me know. Happily take any advice. I may ignore it, but I will very gladly listen to it. And it may be the perfect advice for someone else that's looking at it. So please do share.
You want to get more specific what you want advice on? I feel like that was very broad.
Oh, I don't know. Just now, I mean, the whole thing is so all-encompassing. I don't know what to ask for specifically. I mean, one thing that I've thought about is counseling for myself and for possibly for my marriage, and yeah, anything that shortens the time, shortens the admin time. Because you have the admin of a whole other human that can't do any of their own admin. And especially a new human takes a lot of admin because there's lots of things to set up. And once you have something set up, then like a year later there's a new thing to set up. It's just a lot. So
there's definitely tools for that. I think I have something I can send you that Janine sent me.
Okay.
Because she and her partner were talking about that, doing that in preparation for the baby. So, hold on. I need to gather myself. Talking about mental load. There's like lists you can, I'm sure if you Google it, you can also find a list. The one I'm thinking about is out of a specific book that Janine and her partner are using for
that's awesome.
Counseling.
Yeah, highly recommend pre-baby counseling. We didn't get to it. But premarital counseling was awesome, and I think pre-baby counseling is probably similarly excellent.
So like you can look at all of the admin things, like you called them, which are the mental load things, all of the things that are being done, need to be done within your lives between each other. And really looking at everything. So, which is why I think it's helpful to pull a list, because there's Like, would you remember the, like, yearly tire change, or like bi-yearly car
Registration.
maintenance?
Yeah. We got to do registrations this month.
See? So like, look at all that stuff and talk about it between you and your spouse. Who does what, if you feel like you need to redistribute some of that, and just, you know, talk about it. And with that, I think I like to do that kind of stuff. It helps me to get more calm about it beforehand.
Definitely.
Like, it makes me feel a bit more prepared.
Definitely. Yeah.
And like, try to anticipate, so that this is what we have right now. What do we think? What do we know of? What can we think of? And maybe you can ask a different couple that already has a kid to help you with that list. Like, what is your current mental load list? And then this is what I would do.
The mental energy and space to create that list with you and for you.
Yeah, or you can just try to, from what you're observing of their lives, try to make a list for yourself, and then work with that list again, theoretically. Who would do what? How would we do this? Just thought about that.
Mental load, man. Here we are again.
Yep.
Mental load. She keeps coming around. Oh, what's that? I don't know. Not important. I want to share something later when we do this. It's fine. There's an Instagram account that we follow that posts the invisible mental load of insert thing here, and then does an infographic. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It comes up a lot in our feed.
Oh, cool.
It's like the invisible mental load of motherhood, and it kind of bothers me that it's motherhood, because what we're trying to move toward is sharing that load. And so if we frame it as the invisible mental load of motherhood, one, it acknowledges that most of the people taking on this mental load is motherhood, but it also excludes fathers who are taking on parts of that mental load.
Yeah, it enforces.
And it also closes them off from then taking over some of those parts of mental load, because then it frames it as owned by the mother.
Yep.
So I don't know if there's a good way to do that, or if there's a perfect way to do that. That is also fits in an Instagram post. But I also think they're really good graphics that go into the details of invisible mental load, that I sometimes have been like, oh yeah, I know the mental load associated with this thing that they're talking about. And then I see 3 things that I didn't think about that are part of it. So that's a cool resource.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah. Alrighty.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
That was cool.
Hooray
Who knew? Who knew an hour ago that we would pull this
Oh my
off?
God, we were a hot mess an hour ago.
I think this turned out great, considering us 1 hour ago. High five. Go team.
Forget about us an hour ago. Us 30 minutes ago.
Fair.
I'm impressed.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you to your essential oil. And thank you to our hour-long of recorded counseling. And I love you very much.
I love you very much.
I'll talk to you later.
I'll talk to you later.
And we'll talk to you all next week.
Thanks everyone for listening. Go ahead and please share any thoughts, advice that you have on this in the comments of Instagram or YouTube, or send us a message or an email or whatever. You have all the info. And we love you very much. Bye.